Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Yes, hello. Okay. Uh, Hopefully this is going to work. I'm never really 100% sure, but quite sure. I try my best. Okay. My name's Bruce. This is my classroom in the snowy forest now, and I hope that you've been following along. And if you have, you'll come to know that I like to talk about people, I like to talk about things, and I like to talk about ideas. And so today we're going to start off, we're going to talk about a person. Okay? The person we're going to talk about is, excuse me while I get my chalk. And I'm going to write this down. The person I'm going to talk about. Can you see that? The person I'm talking about today is a guy named Tim Houston. Okay, Tim Houston. Now, I'm putting my gloves on because, well, it's spectacularly cold. It's not, a little tiny bit cold, but it is quite cold today. Okay. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about Tim Houston is the premier of the province of Nova Scotia. If you follow Tim Houston a little bit, you'll know that Tim Houston has his career as an accountant. And the thing about accountants and governance and economics is that accountants have they're very good if you want to look that way, which is in the rear view. You want to say, okay, what happened in your business? You have an accountant. He keeps track of, or she keeps track of your business's finances, your accounts payable, your accounts receivable, your depreciation, your amortization, your cash flow. Make some recommendations on really based on where you are. Okay. Now, the idea of being an accountant runs a little tiny bit. Make an adjustment here. Runs a little tiny bit contrary to some of the characteristics that you want to have if you're in government. Now, if you've been following along, you'll know some stuff about government and about the role of government in the economy. And I've said this repeatedly, and I'm going to say it again because it's worth keeping in mind. Governments do not spend money. In progressive taxation, governments do not spend money in the same sense that you or I or your family or a business spends money. It's not a good way to think about things. Okay, so what governments do is their mandate is to maximize the well-being of everyone in the society, balancing interests, and this idea we talked about, the production possibility curve and resources, and how and sometimes the resources that you have at hand are not readily apparent because time, technology, science advances things, and criteria changes, and the things that we valued 100 years ago are different from the things that we value today. 100 years ago, when we look at this magnificent forest, what we would think is, oh, there's some good firewood, and eventually you'd learn that, oh, you can, from some of these trees, you can get maple syrup, and then you can use the firewood to evaporate off the water and wind up with, well, maple sap, and then you wind up with the syrup. It's actually quite an energy-intensive affair making maple syrup, but this is it, this idea of criteria. Okay, so now Premier Tim Houston. All right, so now, if Premier Tim Houston doesn't do one other thing correctly, I mean, supposedly he doesn't do anything that's horribly malicious, which I don't think so. He made a couple of missteps from the get-go, but that's all right. But this one thing Premier Tim Houston has done is he's recognized that in the province of Nova Scotia, if you happen to be in another part of the world, Canada has provinces and territories, but Canada has 10 provinces, and one of those provinces is Nova Scotia. And the Canadian, we have a constitution. Our constitution was brought to the fore. It was patriated in 1982, and we have a thing called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and such, and we have the Constitution. But broadly in the Constitution, we have Section 91 and Section 92. I don't know why they're called that, but this is it. And they delineate federal responsibility from provincial responsibility. Now, if you recall back a few videos ago, I told a little story about my having dinner one time with a guy named Tommy Douglas. Now, Tommy Douglas is widely credited with Canada's healthcare system the way it is. And if you happen to be paying attention and you're not in Canada, perhaps you might be in the United States and you've heard really some misinformation about the Canadian healthcare system, but broadly here it is. The Canadian healthcare system is absolutely awesome. Okay? You get treated very quickly. You don't have to pay. The doctors are top-notch. The surgeons are superbly skilled, and the facilities are wonderful. Now, that aside, every single thing in the world can be improved. Okay? As long as you remember your core values of what it is that you're doing, you can make stuff better. Okay, coming back to Tim Houston. Now, the province of Nova Scotia, there was a shortage of healthcare professionals. Okay, so there's basically, in summary, there's not enough doctors. There's certainly not enough family doctors. Okay, so you can't reach into the forest to the magic doctor tree and shake it and have doctors fall to the ground. That's not how it works. What you have to do is magically create doctors. Not magically, but it's a process. And that process begins with a strong education system. Okay, so you have parents who are embraced by the Canadian healthcare system, so they don't have to worry about paying the doctor bill. And then their children go off to school and they're taught by teachers that are wonderfully skilled, and they're elevated to the maximum of their potential. Now, some of these students may choose to go to medical school, which brings me to Tim Houston. Nova Scotia has one medical school at the moment, I believe. Now, doctors in Canada can come from other provinces and practice in other, go from one province to another. That's fine. And but the regulation of medicine in Canada is a provincial responsibility. Okay, so Mr. Houston recognized that we need more doctors. Now, he's the premier of the province. He has immense power, really. And he said, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have another medical school. So, whoa. So now we have, it's Dalhousie. Dalhousie has a medical school. And now Dalhousie is going to have a satellite medical school, which will be located at Cape Breton University in the Isle of Cape Breton, which is on the east coast of Canada. It's widely regarded as a wonderful place, and I talked about it before. There you go. So not magically, but by fiat, there's going to be a medical school there. All right. And Tim Houston said something in his announcement that was a little bit interesting and related to some of these topics that we have been discussing. He said that we're going to figure out how to pay for it later. Now, my message to Tim Houston is this: don't worry about it. It just works out. It's a correct application of resource, and there you go. The notion of being concerned about budgets and such is largely secondary. Not even largely secondary. It is fully secondary. So right now, the concern is there's not enough medical professionals in the province of Nova Scotia. So what we're going to do is have a medical school, and it's going to, with time, nothing happens immediately. I mean, I think a medical education is your university, your fundamental university degree. Then you're going to have 3 years, or I believe it's 3 years of further education. And if you happen to be a doctor, and you can correct away. I mean, on the specifics of this. And then after you have your you that level of education, then you have more education because it's a skill, so you have to practice that. So I think there's positions for, or what are called residences, where you're going to go and under tutelage of experienced physicians, you're going to learn the skills. But this is not material. I mean, what it is you recognize the problem, you say, here's a solution. You realize that you are in what's called a progressive taxation government, like the provincial government or the federal government, or in the United States it'd be the state government, or maybe in some cases the municipal governments, the United States, and the federal government. But this money thing, remember, governments do not spend money. Government's job is to maximize the well-being of everyone. And so Mr. Tim Houston has, I'm pretty sure he didn't think this up all on his own. I mean, but give the man the credit for having the courage to embrace the idea and run with it. Mr. Tim Houston has said, we need more doctors. Let's train them. It's that simple. And Nova Scotia is not a huge province population-wise. There's about 1 million people. They can use more people because there's some other issues with this production possibility curve needs to be maximized out, but things are coming along. I talked before about David Dingwall and how there's now greater than 5,000 international students that are studying at Cape Breton University, and that is fantastic. And now we're going to have medical students studying at Cape Breton University. So that's great. So Mr. Tim Houston, now the thing about economics is economics. Economics is the macroeconomics as public policy, which is broadly what I make these videos about. But there's economics and there's politics. Okay, now politics is this: you want your government, as an individual, you're going to want your government to kind of reflect who you are. And you're looking in the mirror and you're seeing things through your perspective. But as I said, in Nova Scotia, there's 1 million people. So it's a job of government to maximize the well-being of everyone, which requires empathy, compassion, education, understanding of the issues, a comprehension of the resources that are available and the skills that you have available. Remember, I talked about Zeta Cobb and this idea of, okay, now what do we have and what do we know and what can we do? And what can we do with what we have and what we know? All right? So that's it. Now, there you are. Now, the political reality is that people tend to want the person to be in charge that reflects their specific views. Now, in this instance, Premier Tim Houston, this action, I laud you fully. And you can be rest assured that on some other actions, maybe I'd be critical because you're not, I don't believe, fulfilling this idea of maximizing the well-being of everyone. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, we live in a wonderful place here in Canada, and it's a democracy, and we get to vote for people, and that's great. And this development, it's going to take some time to come to fruition, but Tim Houston seems to have embraced the idea that this aspect of his job. Thank you very much. There you go. Maybe later I'll talk about another aspect, but that is a horse for another day. All right. Anyway, I hope that everything's going well where you are, and it's certainly a little tiny bit chilly here, I must say. All right, there you go. And yes, so if you happen to be in government and you're recognizing that you have a shortage of something and you can influence that by decree, please do so. And if you like, you can leave me a comment. My name's Bruce. This is my channel. Leave a comment. If you like it, press the like button. If you don't like it, press the like button. There you are. Right. Thank you very much. Goodbye.